The Pope ordered this cassette incinerated. But the smuggled audio wasn't screaming, it was the dead priest's voice. I'm Father Michael. In 30 years of exorcisms, I've seen hell. But File 81's audio didn't just spike, it flatlined. How did a completely mute woman, who hadn't spoken in decades, whisper a sealed Vatican demon name, in a voice that wasn't hers? If you have the stomach, subscribe to the archive, put on headphones, and never pause the playback.
I have spent the last decade analyzing declassified diocesan files, but nothing prepared me for File 81. The incident occurred in the brutal winter of 1994, deep within the isolated Appalachian Mountains. A routine inquiry at the Blackwood Dairy Farm was supposed to take less than 48 hours. Instead, it resulted in a permanent cover-up and a microcassette tape that was never meant to be heard. What you are about to hear is a forensic reconstruction of those 48 hours, based entirely on the leaked evidence. The initial 911 dispatch audio is the first piece of evidence we need to examine closely. A neighbor reported strange, low-frequency humming coming from the Blackwood property for 3 consecutive nights. The dispatcher notes that the caller sounded terrified, claiming the snow itself seemed to be vibrating. Diocesan investigator Sarah Jenkins was assigned to the case, driving up the mountain just as the storm hit. Her patrol car's dash cam audio captures the exact moment her radio signal was swallowed by heavy static. The fear of rural isolation is something we often underestimate until we are completely cut off from help. Sarah's dash cam footage shows her vehicle struggling through 6-foot snow drifts on a narrow, unpaved logging road. There were no other homes for 15 miles, just dense, suffocating pine forests pressing in on both sides. The engine temperature was dropping rapidly, and the heater was failing against the brutal sub-zero Appalachian wind. By the time the dairy farm came into view, she was entirely alone in a whiteout condition. When Sarah finally stepped out of her cruiser, the first anomaly she documented was the livestock. Dozens of dairy cows were standing perfectly still in the freezing pasture, all facing the main house. Her body cam audio records her confused radio calls to dispatch, noting the animals were completely unresponsive. She approached the barn, but the heavy wooden doors were sealed shut with thick layers of black ice. The silence of the farm was absolute, broken only by the howling wind and her own heavy breathing. Entering the main farmhouse, the atmospheric pressure shifted dramatically, causing her ears to pop painfully. The air inside was thick with the overpowering scent of frankincense mixed with the sharp tang of ozone. Sarah's flashlight swept across the living room, revealing furniture pushed against the walls in a perfect circle. She called out for the farm owner and his mute daughter, Alara, but received only a hollow echo. There were no signs of a struggle, just an eerie, meticulous arrangement that felt deeply ritualistic. The most disturbing physical evidence was located at the end of the hallway, leading to the root cellar. The heavy oak door was barricaded from the outside, using heavy iron chains and thick wooden beams. Sarah's body cam captures the deep, parallel scratch marks gouged into the wood, originating from the inside. She documented the strange symbols carved into the doorframe, which diocesan experts later identified as archaic protective wards. The padlock was frozen solid, forcing her to use a crowbar to break the rusted hasp. As she pulled the door open, a wave of unnatural, freezing air rushed up the wooden stairs. The temperature in the cellar was easily 30 degrees colder than the already freezing house above. Her flashlight beam cut through a thick, unnatural fog that seemed to cling to the floorboards. The audio from her recorder picks up a faint, rhythmic dripping sound echoing from the darkness below. She descended slowly, her boots crunching on what she initially thought was frost, but was actually coarse salt. At the bottom of the stairs, the beam of her flashlight illuminated Father Thomas, kneeling in the center of the room. He was the resident exorcist assigned to the diocese, but he was completely motionless, staring blankly at the dirt floor. Sarah approached him cautiously, calling his name, only to realize his skin was pale and covered in severe frostbite. He was dead, yet his body remained locked in a rigid, kneeling posture, defying the natural processes of rigor mortis. There was absolutely no blood in the room, just the overwhelming smell of burnt sulfur and melted wax. The forensic details of the cellar scene pointed to something that standard police procedure could never adequately explain. A heavy silver crucifix lay shattered on the floor, the metal twisted as if it had been subjected to extreme heat. Sarah's camera panned to the corner, where Ilara, the mute daughter, was curled into a tight, catatonic ball. The young woman was alive, but completely unresponsive, her eyes wide open and fixed on the empty space above the priest. Sarah reached out to check the girl's pulse, but suddenly froze as the microcassette recorder on the floor clicked on. The tape had been left running, capturing the final moments of the ritual before the priest's unexplained death. Sarah picked up the degraded microcassette, her hands trembling as she pressed the stop button to halt the recording. She immediately radioed for emergency extraction, but the static on the line had returned, thicker and more aggressive than before. The dashcam footage shows her dragging the catatonic girl up the stairs, leaving the dead priest in the freezing dark. This smuggled tape is the only surviving piece of audio from that night, and we are going to play it now. The microcassette itself was a standard TDK MA90, but the magnetic tape inside was fused together in several places. Vatican audio engineers in Rome spent 3 weeks attempting to splice the ribbon without destroying the data. When they finally managed to digitize the audio, they found the oxide layer was stripped in a pattern that resembled a fractal. This wasn't damage from the cold. It was consistent with exposure to intense, localized electromagnetic radiation. The first 30 seconds of the recovered audio contained nothing but the rhythmic, guttural chanting of Father Thomas. To the untrained ear, it sounds like the traditional Rituale Romanum, specifically the Exorcismus T. However, spectral analysis reveals the pitch is shifted down by 4 semitones, placing it squarely in the infrasound range. This low-frequency distortion is what the neighbor heard through the walls, a sound that vibrates the human eyeball and induces panic. At the 4-minute mark, the priest's voice changes abruptly, shifting from Latin to a wet, clicking phonetic structure. Forensic linguists at the diocese claimed it was a dialect of Aramaic, but the syntax was entirely nonlinear. It sounded less like a language and more like a biological mimicry of speech, as if something was learning to use vocal cords for the first time. The audio levels peak here, causing the analog tape to saturate and distort heavily. This is where the Vatican's impossible anomaly occurs, a detail redacted from all official public summaries. In the background of the priest's chanting, there is a second voice whispering in perfect counterpoint. The engineers confirmed that the microphone used was a monodirectional dynamic mic, which physically cannot pick up a second source from that angle. The whisper wasn't in the room. It was being broadcast directly into the recording head of the device. We must also address the presence of Ilara, the mute daughter, who was crouching in the corner during the recording. Throughout the entire 40-minute ordeal, she makes absolutely no vocal sound, not even a breath or a sob. However, the audio spectrum analyzer shows a massive, rhythmic spike in the ultrasonic range, peaking at 20,000 hertz. She was acting as a living tuning fork, resonating with the entity the priest was trying to banish. The timeline of the recording presents a forensic impossibility that the church tried to bury under equipment malfunction. The tape is a standard 90-minute format, yet the magnetic degradation suggests it had been running for weeks, not hours. The timestamp on the digital transfer reads 48 minutes, but the physical wear on the tape head corresponds to over 300 hours of use. This suggests the event in the cellar existed outside of standard linear time. Cross-referencing this audio with the original 911 dispatch logs reveals a terrifying synchronization. The neighbor's call about the vibrating snow occurred at 11:42 p.m., which aligns perfectly with the audio spike on the tape. The hum the neighbor heard wasn't just noise. It was the acoustic bleed-off from the ritual reaching a resonant frequency with the environment. The snow wasn't just vibrating, it was liquefying under the sonic pressure. Father Rossi, the lead audio engineer for the Holy See, noted in his private journal that listening to the raw file caused severe nausea and nosebleeds. He identified an embedded 19 Hz frequency, known in acoustics as the ghost frequency, which can resonate with a human frontal lobe. This wasn't just a prayer. It was a weaponized sonic attack designed to induce hallucinations and terror in anyone within a 100-yard radius. The final 10 seconds of the tape are the most difficult to analyze, containing a sound that defies biological classification. It begins with the priest screaming, but the scream abruptly cuts off into the wet, crunching sound of a cervical fracture. This was followed by a heavy thud and then absolute silence, save for the mechanical whir of the tape continuing to run. The forensic conclusion was that the priest's neck was snapped with hydraulic force, yet there were no other footsteps in the room. The recording ends with the sound of the cellar door opening and Sarah Jenkins's heavy breathing as she descends the stairs. This proves she arrived after the entity had already manifested and killed the priest. The Vatican realized immediately that this tape was not just evidence of a crime, but a containment breach of acoustic data. The order was given to incinerate the master copy, but they didn't account for Sarah's backup, which she hid inside the lining of her winter coat. Sarah Jenkins was extracted from the Blackwood farm at dawn by a heavily armed diocesan tactical team. They didn't use local law enforcement, instead deploying a specialized unit from the Vatican's own secretive security branch. The dashcam footage from their unmarked SUVs shows them cordoning off the entire 15-mile perimeter. Sarah was placed in the back of a lead vehicle, clutching her winter coat where the micro-cassette was hidden. She never spoke another word after that night, remaining in a state of profound, unbreakable catatonia. The official Vatican report filed 3 weeks later classified the entire incident as a severe psychological break. They claimed Father Thomas suffered a fatal heart attack due to the extreme cold, while Sarah and the farm owner's daughter experienced shared trauma. The diocesan lawyers systematically dismantled any local police interest, citing federal jurisdiction over religious properties. Every physical piece of evidence from the farmhouse was loaded into unmarked incinerator trucks. The narrative was perfectly sealed, designed to make the rural tragedy fade into the quiet obscurity of the Appalachian winter. My investigation into File 81 began when a leaked, heavily redacted copy of the diocesan transit logs crossed my desk. The document detailed the transport of hazardous biological materials from the Blackwood farm to a secure Vatican archive. However, the weight manifest listed exactly 0 biological samples, only a single lead-lined lockbox. This glaring discrepancy prompted me to cross-reference the transport drivers' names with known diocesan intelligence operatives. It became immediately clear that the church wasn't just covering up a death. They were containing an object. Internal Vatican memos, declassified through a back-channel source in Rome, revealed a frantic, years-long hunt for the missing audio. The Holy See's engineers knew the acoustic anomaly on the tape posed a severe cognitive hazard to anyone who listened to it repeatedly. They dispatched cleaners to track down everyone who had even briefly interacted with the Blackwood farm investigation. 3 local dispatchers died in unexplained accidents, and the neighbor who made the first 911 call vanished without a trace. The institutional paranoia was absolute, proving they knew exactly what they had failed to destroy. Sarah Jenkins was transferred to a secluded, church-run psychiatric facility in upstate New York under an assumed name. Medical records indicate she spends her days staring at the corner of her room, tracing invisible geometric patterns on the wall. What the Vatican didn't realize was that Sarah had mailed a duplicate copy of the micro-cassette to a secure Dropbox before her extraction. She had anticipated the cover-up, using her knowledge of diocesan protocol to ensure the truth would eventually see the light of day. That duplicate tape is the exact digital file we are analyzing today, The theological implications of the audio suggest the entity was not a standard demonic presence from traditional Catholic lore. The linguistic analysis of the counter-whispers points to something predating Abrahamic concepts of good and evil. It didn't speak in riddles or demand names, which is the standard behavioral profile of a possessing demon. Instead, it operated like an apex predator of the auditory spectrum, feeding on the acoustic energy of the Latin rite. The priest hadn't just failed an exorcism, he had accidentally opened a door to something entirely alien. Listening to the unfiltered raw audio file has taken a measurable physical toll on my own research team. 2 of my audio technicians had to be hospitalized for severe migraines and temporary hearing loss after just a single shift. We had to implement strict rotation schedules and mandate the use of specialized acoustic dampening headphones. The 19 Hz ghost frequency embedded in the track continues to degrade our equipment, causing hard drives to corrupt and monitors to flicker. It is a stark reminder that some evidence is not meant to be digitized or preserved. The Blackwood Dairy Farm was officially condemned and demolished by the state of West Virginia 2 years after the incident. However, satellite imagery and local topographical surveys show that the land itself remains completely barren. No vegetation has grown on the foundation of the farmhouse in nearly 3 decades, despite the surrounding forest reclaiming the area. Local hunters refuse to enter the sector, reporting that their compasses spin wildly and their dogs whimper in terror. The isolation of the rural landscape has been permanently tainted by whatever was unleashed in that root cellar. In a final attempt to neutralize the threat, the Vatican assigned a team of cloistered monks to continuously chant prayers over the lead-lined lockbox. They believed that constant, holy acoustic vibration would counteract the entity's infrasonic frequency. But the monk's superior recently reported that the chants are slowly being absorbed and mimicked by the box. The lead lining is beginning to vibrate at room temperature, emitting a faint, low-frequency hum that cracks the stained glass in the archive. The containment is failing, and the church is entirely out of options. We have now reconstructed the forensic timeline, analyzed the impossible audio anomalies, and exposed the depth of the institutional cover-up. The evidence clearly shows that Vatican File 81 is not just a historical tragedy, but an ongoing, contained crisis. The smuggled microcassette is a ticking time bomb of acoustic data that the Holy See desperately wanted erased. As we prepare to conclude this analysis, we must address the terrifying reality of what this means for the future. The tape is out of their hands, and the frequency is still spreading. The Vatican believed that by burying the physical evidence and silencing the few surviving witnesses, they could permanently contain the acoustic anomaly of File 81. But they fundamentally misunderstood the true nature of what they were dealing with in that Appalachian cellar. Sound is a physical wave, and once a specific frequency is introduced into an environment, it cannot simply be unrung. It merely waits in the dark for the right medium to carry it forward. The lead-lined lockbox hidden deep in the Roman archives is actively failing, and the digital copy we have just analyzed together is now propagating across the globe through this very broadcast. We are no longer just observing a historical cover-up of an isolated rural tragedy. We are actively participating in the propagation of an ancient, predatory resonance that feeds directly on human attention. The Holy See tried to erase those 48 hours in the freezing snow, but the forensic reality is that the entity never needed a physical body to escape the Blackwood farm. It just needed a voice. And now, it has ours. If you have listened to this entire forensic breakdown with your headphones on, you might have already noticed the subtle, low-frequency hum bleeding through your speakers, proving that the 19 Hz ghost frequency is still entirely active. I need you to help us document the spread of this anomaly by leaving a comment below detailing exactly what you heard during the final 10 seconds of the audio playback. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications, because next week we are officially opening Vatican File 82, which contains the undeveloped Polaroid photographs recovered from the root cellar that the church claimed were burned. Before you leave, I have one final question for you to answer in the comments. Do you believe the Vatican actually destroyed the original master tape? Or is it still being used to feed whatever is trapped inside that lead box?